All right, sports fans, how's everybody out there doing? William Martin coming at you one more time here on YouTube with another edition of the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge Podcast. And on this edition of the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge Podcast, I have the privilege of being joined by Cal Wonder God. Cal, how are you doing, my brother?
I'm great, fam. What's going on? Thank you for having me on the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast. What are we doing today?
Well, I want to talk about the one and only New York Knickerbockers, okay? Because after somewhat of a surprising firing of head coach Tom Thibodeau last week, and I said somewhat, okay, and we're going to talk about that more. The New York Knicks now find themselves searching for a new head coach. But my question is, okay, and this is not a slight, how desirable is the Knicks head coaching position? And I say this because Tibbs was there for 5 years, got him to the postseason in 4 out of 5 years. He was the first head coach to do that since Jeff Van Gundy. Okay, Jeff Van Gundy hadn't coached the Knicks, I think, since the beginning of the 2001-2002 season before he left. All right, you figure Tibbs was the first head coach since Van Gundy to get 5 years.
Right.
It, it's been a revolving door at Madison Square Garden for Knicks head coaches. And I said this, and some people are going to disagree
Okay.
with what I'm about to say, but that's all
Good.
good. But my thing
Tell
is
it.
this: the Knicks found a way, okay, to ruin their best moment in 25 years. Okay, the fact that they just got to the
Oui.
Eastern Conference Finals for the first time since 2000. There was a buzz in the Big Apple for the Knicks that we probably have not seen since they last went to the NBA Finals in 1999. Okay, and it's one of those where you figured the Knicks were going to say, all right, let's try to find a way to build off of that. But at the same time, you didn't expect their first move to be firing Tom Thibodeau after the season was done. However, here we are, and now the Knicks have to find themselves a new head coach.
Well, what I'm gonna say is simply this. That last time they was in the joint and they lost to the Spurs, the city was electric through every playoff situation they had. It was electric. Again, we've talked previously, we're talking now. It was like having a Mike Tyson fight outside because when you go through the hoods and whatever it was, and the electricity, it was like New York Yankee electricity. And you had to be here to see it to believe it. But the Knicks fan base always believe it's always all the time. And this is one year, like I'm a hater, but I didn't really hate. I thought it was more of a technical situation why they lost. And it goes back to the Knicks assistants and player development. This is things we talk about on different podcasts with different people, different teams. It boils down to player development because if you're going to have a bench and you got young players and you got situation, you got to have some belief. You can't run your starters into the ground. These are things we talked about long time ago, right? Did we not? We
Mm-hmm.
did. So keeping it current and keeping it moving, Tom Thibodeau was his own worst enemy because he's like a Steve Van Gundy, a Jeff Van Gundy. He's like, the current leader of the Miami Heat, Pat Riley. So you know what you're getting. You're going to get good hardcore work situation, but if you don't got no bench, it's done. So now coming up to the coaches now, who would you think is possible to be a New York Knicks head coach and can handle this New York media?
I'm not sure because it's like you figure like you're hearing some of the names of the guys that they're looking at. Okay,
Right.
You got Emi Adoka with the Rockets, and I see that and I'm like, why would Udoka want to leave the Rockets? Because they got a young squad that they're building, that has the potential to be something special. You're hearing that there's mutual interest between current Dallas Mavericks head coach Jason Kidd and the Knicks. And of course, Kidd, for a brief minute, did play for the Knicks. Dallas is in a lot of turmoil right now, okay, after that Luka Doncic trade. However, you're going into a scenario next season. You got the number one pick. I think everybody assumes it's going to be Cooper Flag. You still got Anthony Davis, and at some point next season, you're going to get Kyrie Irving back.
Hey,
Okay, so it's kind of like, would Jay Kidd want to leave Dallas? And my other thing is, do the Knicks, since Jason Kidd is under contract, since Ime Udoka's under contract with the Rockets, do the Knicks have the compensation necessary to give these teams? And the answer is no, because the
they
Knicks
gave it up.
the Knicks screwed themselves. Okay, and just I'm not going off on a tangent here, but I will say this: you know what you're getting with Tom Thibodeau from the fact that he does not use his benches a lot. Any step along the way of his coaching career, that has been
Yeah.
the case. Okay, so you know what you're getting with Tibbs coming in. But even with that said, the Knicks front office didn't do him any favors over the offseason because they parted with a lot of guys. You look at the players and the picks that they gave up to the Brooklyn Nets for Mikal Bridges. And honestly, I'm not saying that the Nets are going to flip those picks around to make themselves a super team. No, but you don't give up that many first round picks for a role player. That is what
Hello.
that is what Mikal Bridges is. But it's one of those. The Knicks sat back and saw this guy dropping more than 20 points a game for the Nets. He was their best option. Okay, so that's why he was putting in that work like that. So it's one of those where if you're the Knicks, you kind of bet it against yourself. And now this time around, when you really need those assets to go out there and make something work, you don't have them. Okay, whether it's trying to get Giannis, whether it's trying to get one of these head coaches that you want, that's under contract with another team, it's not going to work. Why? Because the Knicks last summer was so focused on getting all of the Villanova guys together. The Knicks were so focused on trying to put a team together to beat the Celtics. And like I've said this multiple times to multiple people, and I've said it on this.
Before the season, too.
Right.
Before the season.
hmm and I said this. I said, listen, the Knicks put together a team to beat the Celtics, but they did not put together a team to beat the team that just knocked them out of the playoffs this year, which was the
The
same team
Pacers.
that,
Absolutely.
and it was the same team that sent them home last year. Okay, so when it's all said and done, to answer your question, I feel like Michael Malone would make the most sense. Okay, it's one of those. His dad coached and was an assistant coach for the Knicks. He himself is from New York City. He's from Queens. I can't remember if it's a
You
story or
said that before, though.
or
You did. So
yeah, I can't remember if it's a story or
I'll
Long.
co-sign that. You said
Okay,
that.
right, or Long Island City, but he's from Queens. The other problem is this: you bring in Michael Malone, you're bringing in another Tom Thibodeau. Okay, so it's what I'm saying, because it's like you heard some of the
In a
names.
way,
Don't get me wrong, Michael Malone can win. He proved that in Denver, but it's going to take time. And the biggest
right.
the
And a
biggest
different system, too.
right. And the biggest thing for me is this the James Dolan factor, because James Dolan has to find a way to meddle with things. This is why I call the Knicks the Dallas Cowboys of the NBA, because they're a team by stature based off the name, the venue that they play in, the city that they play in. But
Toughest
they
shit ever.
but they have that owner that's going to go out of his way to mess things up. You got Jerry Jones in Dallas, and of course the folks in New York, they've got themselves James Dolan running the Knicks. That's why I say, why would anybody, want to go out there and and take this gig? And before I flip it back over to you, I'll leave you with this, okay? Tibbs in 5 years won more playoff games, I think, than like the last five or six guys that had the Knicks.
Agreed.
you know, had the,
Absolutely.
had the Knicks coaching gig. And like I said, nobody, he was the first guy since Van Gundy that had 5 years
Yeah.
um, with the Knicks. I'm gonna go down the list right here of guys once Jeff Van Gundy left,
Let's
as,
go.
as far as who coached his team. You had Don Chaney, you had Herb Williams, you had Lenny Wilkins, you had Larry Brown, you had Isaiah Thomas, you had Mike D'Antoni, you had Mike Woodson, you had Derek
Mhm.
Fisher, Kurt Rambis, Jeff Hornacek, Dave Fizdale. Okay, and
Mhm.
and on
Fact.
top on top of that, Mike Miller. So
Fact.
you had 12 guys. Okay, and this is basically from 2001 until 2020. So in a 20-year stretch, the Knicks had 12 different head coaches. So that's not even a new head coach every 2 years. Okay. And again, all of this was on James Dolan's watch. That's the biggest problem. James Dolan is going to find a way to screw this up.
He always does. And he messing with everybody cable here. So this is why I got just straight internet. Because when you spend the amount of money, and there's certain volumes in New York City as far as cable, if you want to watch the Knicks, you got to get certain packages, and it's cable vision,
Mm-hmm.
right? So if you don't got that, with cable vision, you got a link to the Knicks, you got a link to all four people, whatever, woo woo. So he making double money off of us, right?
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the day, the product that's been put out, and while the Knicks will not win next year either, and I'm on record with this, they won't win next year either, is because of the they're dysfunctional, and it's nothing I could say to fix my how I feel about it. They're dysfunctional, but they have a whole new group of talent. And like we talked yesterday about the young dudes, you kind of got to find somebody that could reach the young dudes as a coach.
Right.
You know?
Right.
Like you got to find that one person that could get to them. Y'all could get certain situation. Y'all can take Jalen Brunson off the ball. That's the Knicks. And he's their best player and has proven it over the last 2, 3 years, whatever it is since he's been there. He's their best player.
Mm-hmm.
But you got attributes, you got situation, you got different people, you got this, that, and the third. Cool. But it starts and it ends with Jalen Brunson. So whoever they pick, oh, you want to bring Jason Kidd? What's the connection, William?
Listen, J Kidd was in Dallas, when Jalen Brunson was there. Okay, so they have a past. And like we talked about it before with the Knicks, it's one of those where you think about it. Jalen Brunson, when he was at Villanova, came from a ball movement system. He's got to get back to not holding the basketball. He's got to spread that rock. He's got to show some love. It can't be the ISO ball for him all the time. I think that has got to be the biggest thing because the Knicks have talent. Okay, they truly do. And I'm not trying to knock Jalen Brunson for what I'm about to say, but what I'm about to say is this: I feel like since he went to the Knicks, at times he believed his own press clippings. You know what I'm saying?
That's a
I
fact.
get it, I get it. But at the end of the day, for the Knicks to go where they feel that they can go, there has to be more ball movement if they're going to be able to do that. And I think Jalen Brunson's got to give that rock up a little bit. So whomever is going to be the next head coach, that's got to be the case. And it's so difficult right now. I think out of all of the major sports, I think basketball more than any other sport, it is so difficult to be a head coach right now because the star players have
You're
all of
right.
they have all of the cachet and or the players period have all of the
They got the
cachet.
power.
Right. So and that's what happened to Tibbs. That's what happened with Michael Malone. It happened with Taylor Jenkins. So many established quality head coaches that we have seen be let go in recent years. And the thing is like management's not going to fire the players. They're going to fire the person who's the most expendable, which is the head coach. My
Coach, so I'm
thing
gonna ask you
is,
a question.
yes.
Real quick. Let me ask you a question, real
Mm.
quick. Do you like the Knicks?
as far as like their
Just
what
a team that's playing that could be viable for a championship or whatever. Do you think the Knicks are viable?
as of right now, no. I feel like
Me neither.
the Knicks the
Me
Knicks
neither.
the Knicks are good enough to get to the playoffs. The Knicks are good enough to win one or two playoff series. We've seen that. Okay,
Mhm,
they have
mhm,
illustrated
mhm.
that. They've got to find a way to take that next step. That is going to be the biggest thing for me. I really would like to sit back because I do believe the Knicks are going to make some moves over the summer.
I
It's
think
just,
it's going to be good.
I really truly do. All right. I just want to sit back and
But they
see.
gave all their draft picks up for Mikal Bridges, bro.
And that's the problem because for them to go out there and make the type of moves that they want to make, a la getting maybe a Giannis, depending, if he wants to come to the Knicks, it's going to take another team. It's going to take another trade partner because the bottom line is outside of Karl Anthony Towns, if Milwaukee wants Karl Anthony Towns, I'm not sure if the Knicks have a lot that's going to entice the Bucks to go out there and make that deal.
I would trade him. I would trade Carl Anthony Towns. I would trade him.
But but
Everybody I could think of on the Knicks roster, because the Knicks, they roster, and I said this from earlier, they had the best roster in the whole entire NBA, up to down, the top five players, what they average, player efficiency, and all that. Me, in my mind, that's just my opinion. I thought they had the best roster, one through five, based on what they could do. At the end of the day, before they could get to what they were supposed to do, they all was tired, bro.
listen, I mean, again, it's one of those where you know what you're going to get with Tibbs. You know he's going to run his guys out of gas. You know that like it's been proven. Okay, he did it in Chicago, did it for his brief stint in Minnesota, and of course he did it this time with the Knicks. You know what you're going to get with Tom Thibodeau. My thing is, who are you going to go out there and try to find a way to fit and be on the same page with these players? I think there's talks about Johnny Bryant, who is an assistant coach to the Cleveland Cavaliers. He was an assistant coach for the Knicks, under Tibbs until this past season. So clearly there is some rapport there. But uh like just hypothetically speaking, if you're the Knicks, if that was the case, if you hire Bryant, you're bringing in a guy who does not have any previous head coaching experience in the NBA, and you're bringing him into a team clearly that the expectations are NBA championship, and you're talking about doing it in the
Right.
biggest media market in the
Absolutely. In the
world.
biggest media market. And
So
so for me,
yeah, go ahead.
go
No,
ahead,
no,
bro.
no, go ahead, please.
Me personally, you could kind of bring in anybody with this situation because the team is established. You just got to figure out who strengths and who weaknesses, how to work them, how to put them together. So you got to get with them like right now, bring them into a group situation and let them run. And as a coach, let these dudes that still sign, let them run. And let's see what happened with them running. But for the better part of it this last year, nobody ain't really get hurt like they got hurt last year,
Right.
right? So you're not really missing that. They just got beat by a better team.
Definitely.
Me, I'm gonna bring in Caesar the monkey, the Planet of the Ape dude, to be the coach. That's who I'm bringing in. You could bring anybody in. Caesar, I'm bringing in the Planet of the Ape dude, and he's gonna show all y'all how to facilitate. Yo, bro, it could be me or you. We don't watch enough to know enough about basketball and know about. We talking basketball because when you said something to me the other day, we was doing a podcast. You said, "Yo, we talking basketball. It's something we know about, but how we our view on it is different. But it all equal what? So with the Knicks, I'm like this about it. You could bring anybody in. For me, it's Caesar because I'm disrespectful. But at the end of the day, it could be a Danny Hurley. You know what I'm saying? It could be a Mark Jackson. It could be somebody that's coaching somebody else somewhere else, another team. You put him in this market and he has a scheme. The team is already there, bro. They already there. It's up to who do what and how they put it. And what I'm gonna say about this is the good shit about sports. This is the good shit about the NBA. Cause like we talk, yo, NBA final, we watching it. Guess what? Oklahoma blew them out as we expected. It is a split. So now you got to go to this. Of course, the TV networks and everybody, they're going to milk it out. They're going to do what they do. But I'm going to pass the microphone back to you. As far as the Knicks is concerned, they was a bigger headline than what we watching right now.
Oh yeah, I mean, listen, New York market, and again, they made a run that a lot of people really, weren't expecting them to be on. And of course, like we talked about recently, you know, you have Celebrity Row and like at Madison Square Garden, there's actually a couple of rows. I mean, you name it, they're there. John McEnroe, Ben Stiller, Spike Lee. We can go right. Tracy Morgan, Chris Rock. We
All
can
of it.
go. Yeah, we can go right down the list. But it's just one of those. As far as like getting back to what I said before, as far as James Dolan goes, and
Right.
James Dolan over the years, he can't help himself but by putting his hand in the cookie jar. You brought in Larry Brown. You know how Larry Brown is as a head coach. You've got to give him, or you had to give him time to like develop stuff. You didn't do that. Isaiah Thomas, as great of a player as Isaiah Thomas was, he was
Right.
good. He was good as far as finding talent. Isaiah's biggest
Absolutely.
uh,
Absolutely.
Isaiah's biggest problem was he was not good at finding talent that could mesh together in order to be a winning team. That was his biggest thing. You bring in Donnie Walsh, okay, at the request of NBA Commissioner, former NBA Commissioner David Stern, all right? And Donnie Walsh tried
A
to
big
rebuild things.
situation, right?
Right, right. And Donnie Walsh tried to rebuild things until James Dolan pissed Donnie Walsh off. Why? Because Donnie Walsh wanted no parts of Carmelo. Okay. And once, James Dolan made that trade, and the big reason why James Dolan made that trade was because a lot of people forget this. The Knicks really thought that they had a chance to get LeBron when he left Cleveland the first time to go to Miami. And
I ain't believe that though.
I didn't
I ain't
either.
believe that, not even a little bit.
I didn't
And we
either.
was on time with that, right?
Okay. And it's one of those where once that happened, James Dolan wanted himself a star. And you think about everything that they gave up to Denver to get Carmelo, and Donnie Walsh after that was like, you know what, I'm out of here. My bottom line is this: if you hire people to do a job, let them do the job. Okay, you
Right.
can't you can't
But
undermine.
who is Leon Rose though? Because I'm confused. He was a player agent, and
Right,
now he's in that seat over there making executive decisions on basketball players. He's
right,
not a bat. We played more basketball than him.
right. Listen, it's one of those where I feel like again that's what's going to mess the Knicks up because you have to save when you have the assets like they had. You have to save it for the right guy. Last summer when the Knicks made that trade with the Nets, they were not a Mikal Bridges away from being a championship team. They really weren't, and they just got mesmerized
Okay.
and focused on trying to beat the Boston Celtics. That's
So
all it was.
question, wait. So question. So
hmm
who's the player they trade down to beat the Pacers?
I don't know because the thing is, you have to get more depth. That's number one. You have to get more
Okay,
depth.
bet
You
it,
you
bet
have
it.
to you have to get more depth. You need another big because the thing was, they never replaced Isaiah Hartenstein. Okay, because Mitchell Robinson is a rim protector. Mitchell Robinson is not going to get you points. He's going to get you rebounds. He's going to protect the rim. He'll block a couple of shots.
And can't shoot a free throw to save his life.
But Mitchell Robinson is a guy who is better served when he's part of a big man rotation.
Okay,
Okay.
agreed.
You know what I'm saying? If you have at least one more
Agreed.
big
Agreed.
where he can rotate with at that position, you've got something. They let Hartenstein go because they were so focused on their wing players, over the summer. And then again, they gave up depth to do it. If you're going to beat the Pacers, if you're the Knicks, you need yourself multiple rim protectors, okay? And you're going to need speed out there too, because especially if you just watch the last series where the Knicks lost to the Pacers, they were
Let me
at,
ask you a question.
yeah,
Let me ask you a question, William.
hmm
So we didn't have this discussion like 99 podcasts later. So my thing is always about player development. Aren't
hmm
the assistant coaches on a team responsible for player development?
they are. But the problem is
Oh,
like, but the problem is in the current era of basketball, how much teaching can you do?
well, it's how much you want to win. Because at the end of the day, we talked about this, and I told you we did so I can't even count how much stuff we was actually done, but we talked pretty much about pretty much all the teams in different situations over the years. We're talking about like 8, 9 years, bro. We've been talking
hmm
about this. So now going back, what I said as far as when Mitchell Robinson and certain bigs came and they had certain bigs and certain people, they're not developing the Nick assistant coaches are not developing the players. And we go through so many top picks and good stuff the Knicks had, and they ended up trading them, saying like, "Oh, well, you can't do this, you can't do that." They didn't develop nobody. It's
But
no homegrown talent developed. Whoever they developed, they traded. They went on to become NBA champions. Like they went to become all stars, but not while they was with the Knicks.
listen, this is not a statement of a hater, but I will ask you this realistically. When was the last time that the Knicks developed a player?
I
Exactly.
can't really, I
Exactly.
can't really think of one.
Exactly.
Like a total development.
Because like
You
the
know what?
Knicks,
Here's what I'm gonna tell you. I'm gonna
hmm
be petty. Jeremy Lin. When he came in, it was.
no, I
I'm
mean,
not. I'm being petty. I'm being petty.
right. But I'm talking about the Knicks
Now
drafting.
we know from the ground up, but
Yeah.
no, I'm being petty because it was situational where dudes was able to come in and get busy, and then other dudes that was there that was the face of the franchise. One Carmelo Anthony was
hmm
hating. Get this dude out. Yo, y'all winning. Y'all winning. It's so many dudes we could think of that was in a situation that became NBA championships again in All Stars, but honestly, they never developed nobody.
They haven't. And it's like the thing is like, it's been a month of Sundays since the Knicks drafted a guy and he developed into something. And I got news for people. Patrick Ewing doesn't count because Patrick Ewing was basically a finished product, you
He
know.
was a grown ass man when he came in
Right,
'85 and they cheated the draft and all that.
right. You
They
know,
cheated the draft,
right,
but it was good for us.
right. So, and the Knicks really don't have a history of that. They give up on guys, like you said. You look at Obi Toppin,
Where
currently
he had 17 points the other game,
in game
and it was
one.
a winning game, right?
Yeah, yeah. And you think about,
Bang.
you think about Mark Jackson, you think about Rod Strickland. We can go right down the list, okay? But nonetheless, it's something that the Knicks simply don't do. But getting back to the topic at hand,
Right.
it's one of those where it's going to be a slippery slope for whomever they hire. And I think, I hope the person has success, but it's one of those where you are going to be walking into the dragon's lair, so to speak, because you got to deal with James Dolan and you've got to deal with the expectations
They are bottom feeders. The
and
Knicks
not,
fans and the Knicks fan base and how they move as a unit are bottom feeders. I'm gonna give the New York Mets some props, right? They said even kind of sort of the Nets. They're like, you know what? Maybe we need to change this, change that. Whether it was successful or not, they changed it.
hmm
The Knicks, on the other hand, they still believe the Knicks fans to the Knicks fan base in nostalgia. Nostalgia don't win. Move from the nostalgia. I don't want them to hire anybody that was a former player. You gotta get with the time and who can reach out to the younger players now. And like if Jalen Brunson is your favorite, your best, or your favorite player, it goes through him.
yeah,
These dudes is all pro,
hmm
right? Him and Cat,
hmm
all pro, right?
right,
Bang. So you work through them, and this is why Tibbs got fired because somebody out, them dudes, Mikal Bridges said, he said, I ain't talk to him. He lied. You did. And you know, because he told you, yo, bro, we tired. What are we doing? We're going through 2 hour practices and we got to go play. You play me 45 minutes, 47, 46. Yo, what are we doing here? So I say this to you, right? And we've been watching this shit for years between me and you, and we cover all different teams, all different sports, all different type of situations. But because we New Yorkers and we from here, right? Do you think the Tom Tibbs firing was wrong?
I do. I do. And it's one of those where, like I said at the top of this, I said I get it, but I don't get it. Because the thing is, I get it from the standpoint that Tibbs is a guy, he'll wear out his welcome. And then on top of that, Tibbs is a guy where he will run his players into the ground. But on the flip side of that, you know what you're getting, when you hire Tom Thibodeau.
Sure.
But on the other side, Tibbs is a guy who knows what it takes to win with the Knicks because he was an assistant coach with Jeff Van Gundy in New York back in the day. All right. And at the same time, you look at what Tibbs did in his 5 years there, and it was better than any coach that they had
He
since
did good.
since Jeff Van Gundy. So again,
He did good.
my question is, it's kind of like breaking up with the girl, but you don't have something else lined up, and that's the whole thing.
No.
You know,
And so go back to when I said Caesar could be the coach. As long as Caesar
yeah,
got a plan, he could be the coach. Me and you could be the coach.
right.
They already got the team in place. It's
Hmm.
a matter of what work ethic you're going to install in them, what type of offensive situation, what type of defensive situation, what are you going to put into it? But then you got to be on time with your players to know that if we talking in the media about anything, we on the same page. It can never be like somebody got the balls because those players on the Knicks is pussy, right? The only person that said something about what was going on all year long was Mikal Bridges. He played the most minutes, I think, probably out of anybody in the league this year. So you keep it G, and so you understand he's exhausted himself on both ends of the court, right? He's not only, and then he's expected, so he had to round his game out and make it round out around who he worked with. He averaged 18 points a game.
Right.
You know with a system where you got two players that's better than you got another player that do what he do, you got another player that do what he do. Y'all all play the system. Josh Hart was to me, out of all of them, was the heart of that team. And I'm gonna say this because he had multiple things he could do.
Right.
And we're not only talking about like he was other than Jalen Brunson, who had the most triple doubles on the Knicks?
This season, I'm not sure.
Josh Hart.
Okay.
It's no if and a but. It's something you can look up. When I say being a part of a piece of something, you can't play with the heart of your team. You can't play around with them. You got to give it to them. If you're on the bench, you're good. You're on the bench. If you're not, you leave him in starting lineup. You take him out and you put Mitchell Robinson in. Y'all won that one game,
Hmm.
and that was the only game you won. Where you took Hart out the lineup, right?
Hmm.
And you won the game. Bang. There's something wrong with what's going on. Dude, like I looked through, dude is Tom Tibbs. I went through the whole shit from the time it started. I watched a lot of games in general in the NBA, but when it came down to this, because of my hater, and I'm gonna scream and I'm gonna laugh till I can't, till my stomach hurt on the Knicks fans. I went and, but I did the actual analysis of the game because I'm about game, and I'm gonna tell you this: it was stupid to like cut Josh Hart minutes where you was banging him out for the whole game in the overtime, right? Right. They had Josh Hart playing in games where he played the whole game and part of the overtime. Do you remember?
I do.
Right. So now they doing what they doing. Why you? What are you doing?
Well, listen, when Tibbs did that, for game three, I think he was just out of desperation. And it truly was because he had to try something different since basically, they knew going to Indianapolis that their season was on the line and it did work. But the thing was, making a switch like that, where you're going to take Josh Hart and put him on the bench and bring in Mitchell Robinson, it's not sustainable because you have
Never.
Indiana. Because first of all, in the postseason, you always know teams are always going to make adjustments. That's number one. And
Have to, otherwise you're not gonna win.
Rick Carlisle is too seasoned of a coach, and we saw what Indiana did in Game Four. No pun intended. They stepped up the pace, and they just pushed
Yep.
that,
Yes, they did.
and they
Yes,
pushed
they
the
did.
and they pushed the basketball. And getting back to the Knicks, if the Knicks, are going to beat the Pacers going forward, they have to get better defensively. They have to get better with their transition defense. They have to get better defending a pick and roll.
Absolutely,
But
yo.
the but
Absolutely.
but the problem is two of your current five starting five are defensive liabilities. Jalen Brunson
That's
is
true.
is not a good perimeter defender.
No,
Carl
he's a liability.
Carl Anthony
But you can
Towns,
hide him. You can hide him, but that means somebody else got to step up for him, which was Josh Hart. He did all the dirty work and defended every team best guard.
but not only that, you can hide him, yeah, but then when you've got Cat, who's a defensive liability, it's easier when you have one guy who's a
Well,
li- who,
that's
who's a
the
li-
problem.
who's a liability. But when you have two, it's tougher. You think back
Well,
with
that's the problem.
I'm just going to flip the script here for a minute. You think back for when Rudy Gobert was with Utah, and of course
He's a liability now. He can't
and
defend
now
the pick and roll.
and now when Rudy Gobert is in Minnesota, you can get away with it if it's one person who's a liability at the offensive end of the floor.
Okay.
You can somewhat get away with it with one defensive liability, but when you have two defensive liabilities, especially against a team like Indiana who likes to get up and down the floor, it's going to hurt you. So like that's the thing with me for the Knicks. They've got to get better defensively. They also need more depth. That's the bottom line because
But like real player depth, like
yeah.
players that could play depth, like if you're gonna sign him, if you're gonna waste or you're gonna spend, I'd say 50 million.
Hmm.
You gotta get players that could come in and produce. And that's locker room cool.
Right.
Because that's what's missing from the NBA is locker room dudes. You know
Hmm.
what I'm saying? Like you need that. PJ, he was on the shit, but he was getting DMPs straight through the season.
Right.
Why is he on your roster? He can't help you at all. Why is what's his name? PJ, what's his name?
Tucker.
Why is he on your roster?
Listen, again, that's Tibbs right there. And again, that's the issue. That's one of the issues. Okay, as far as what Tibbs doesn't use his bench. Okay, and
At
that
all. At
I
all.
think and I think that was like that along with the fact that Tibbs is not a guy that makes adjustments. That's what led to his downfall, and his termination,
I
if you
would
look
have
with the
been
league.
got rid of him because if you go backwards on where he coached at,
Hmm.
he got everybody to that second tier.
Yeah.
And after that, it was nothing, bro. To the second tier.
Well, again, I don't. I'm really, It's really going to be interesting for me to see who the Knicks hire. It truly is because I
Who do you
really
think
want.
they should hire?
I don't know because, like, again, it's one of those where I feel like Michael Malone would probably want the job, but again, like I said, I'm not trying to slight Michael Malone. I think Michael Malone is a darn good head coach.
He's a good coach.
You know,
He's a
he
good coach.
he showed that by leading Denver,
No disrespect for me neither.
you
That's
know, to
I want
to the championship 2 years ago. But my thing is, I feel like bringing in Michael Malone, you're bringing in another Tibbs.
there you
And
go. And another Riley, another Van Gundy, a Stan Van Gundy, same
and
shit, different year.
here's my thing with Michael Malone. Okay, Michael Malone had 10 years in Denver. Michael Malone led Denver to a championship. Michael Malone is going to want some type of say in personnel decisions. And I'm telling you right
It,
now, you bring him in, him, Dolan, and Leon Rose are going to bump heads. It's not a matter of if,
it ain't gonna work.
it's more like when. So
So I
like,
would bring him in for like maybe 2 years on a 2 year contract and see what he could do
and he's
and
not
keep
gonna,
it easy.
and he's not going to take a 2 year deal because at the
But
end of the
listen
day,
though, William, they're ready, they're playoff ready as they are. Simple adjustment is simple adjustment.
mhm,
They are a playoff team right now on the cusp of getting there. They
yeah,
done showed the last 3, 4 years, they've been right there. The New York Knicks been right there, but they can't get over the hump, which has been the story of that franchise since 1973, right? I've been laughing over 40 years at dudes and people and stuff. And every time I said something, it all came true. But now breaking down an analysis of what we saw this past year, and we talking about coaches, because we talked about this earlier, like who? Me, I say bring in Bigfoot or somebody. Like I'm not even they could they could resuscitate somebody, like whoever. It's just what scheme you put, how you manage your players, how you manage their time. It could be anybody. Like how when Doc Rivers inherited the team he inherited to win the chip in 2008,
yeah, with Boston,
Boston. They
hmm,
ain't listen to that dude. They coached themselves and won.
right?
I'm lying?
No,
No, I'm not. And they said it.
yeah, I mean, like I said, it's going to be very, very interesting, but I think it's going to be a very interesting summer for the New York Knicks as well. Listen, I just simply don't know what direction they go in with this head coaching
I
position.
agree with you.
Clearly, they got to find somebody who's on the same page with the players. That's first and foremost.
Right.
Who's it going to be? We've got to wait and see. And like I said before, there's talks about J. Kidd. Did the Knicks have enough to compensate Dallas
Well,
since he's under contract?
why?
You know that.
Why wouldn't you just hire somebody from outside? Why would you gotta go grab him from over there? Nah, let him quit.
Yeah. Well, listen. Trust me. I'll tell you like this. Dallas is not going to let Jason Kidd walk away to New York scot free. They're going to want to
No.
have. They're
But
going to
why
want.
go after him if you could get somebody else? You could get Bigfoot again or Caesar or one of these people. It could be me or you. Yo, the team is already set. But you know how semantics and everything does and how it works. It's what it is, but it's a good talk about for New York, New York City, and New York fans. They showed out there a bunch of apes and animals. They did good, like how we usually do out here in New York. But at the end of the day, you could be an ape and an animal and you're gonna lose.
Right. Yeah, like I said, it's just going to be a very, very interesting summer, and I figure. I would imagine the Knicks probably have their head coach in place before the draft, which is a couple of weeks away, and then you want to have things situated, of course, before the draft, and free agency,
Absolutely.
and when it's time to make those trades, because there's going to be a lot of trades this year. I truly do think so. This country is known for its fireworks on the
Correct.
Fourth of July. Free agency in the NBA always starts around the Fourth of July,
Well,
and
let's bang out. Let's bang out
and, and I
and let's bang out, William. Let's bang out. Let's get this stuff out. But I'm really waiting for college football because you're great at it. I'm waiting for the OTAs, the camps, all the stuff with the NFL. And we got the pennant and we got baseball,
Mhm.
bro.
Right,
This is good. I don't think it's getting enough. The NBA championship is getting enough love. We
right,
talked about that the other day and why,
right.
but I still think we got a lot to look forward to as sports fans, and I look forward to watching you on 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast. Anytime I want to learn something about what's going on here, I'm tuning into you, bro.
Well, listen, I definitely appreciate that, man. And as always, I appreciate your time and I appreciate everybody else who took the time out to check out this podcast. And for all you folks out there, if you like what you heard and saw, you know what to do. Hit that like button as well as subscribing to this channel. Like I always say, it
Yo,
is greatly appreciated. Also, if you're on the X, formerly known as Twitter, you can check us out at 300 Pounds of Sports. And if you give me that follow, I'll give you that follow right back. Also, Okay, just like it is on the X, you can check me out on Instagram at 300 pounds of sports knowledge. You give me that follow, I'll give you that follow right back. And you could also check us out on Facebook at the Sports Depot 365. And as far as I'm concerned, one of the better
Hold
sports debating sites going
on,
on.
hold
So,
on. This is the first time we ever doing this. I want everybody that's looking at this. You see our Jersey game right now?
mm,
Let's look at our Jersey game. I'm looking behind you. I see like situation. We've been talking about this for years. This is the first time I did it because I always have other type time, other type thing. Yo, this is beautiful. Like we get to see sports while we talking it. Thank you, William Martin, for having me on 300 pounds of sports knowledge. Everybody look up. Let's tune in.
listen. Like I said before, glad to have you. You know, it ain't your first time, and I know it won't be your last, man. And
Absolutely not.
And for everybody else out there, until next time, everyone, my name is William Martin. I'm signing off and I'm saying thanks once again for tuning in to the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast here
Peace.
on YouTube. Be well, everybody.